time and everyone else's time, and we can just jump right in.
Okay, perfect. And we decided not to use a PowerPoint today for this topic. We thought we'd just have a really good discussion. I did put some notes together though for all of them, because this is such a great topic, how to overcome your fear of prospecting. You know, first of all, if you've ever wondered, why do I hate this so much? Then you're totally normal. Okay. There's actually a course. There were two professors. I remember Samuel was one of their first names. I can't remember their names right now, but they actually created a course, a 2-year course called How to Overcome Your Fear of Prospecting and Self-Promotion. And what I remember about their workbook is right on the first page of the book, it said, it is a myth that all great salespeople love to prospect. So when you think about it, you know, especially if you're calling strangers, but even if they're not strangers, even if it's your past clients are here, but you feel like you're asking for business or you're promoting yourself, it is uncomfortable for most people. Now, there are some exceptions, but it's uncomfortable. And also, rejection is not fun, right? So that's just called normal. In fact, I think I read in their course that the anxiety and the tension that goes on in your body when you get rejected, it's almost the same feeling as if you're getting beat up. So kind of a big deal. You know, I was thinking about my first time that I went door knocking. My broker told me I had to go door knock this neighborhood across from the office. And I think I sat in my car and I cried for an hour, because that was about the amount of time I probably should be knocking. And then I went back to the office and he asked me if I had knocked on the doors, and I didn't lie. I said, no, I didn't. So he made me go back and he sat and watched me. He had his car and he sat and watched me. So I did knock, but I knocked so quietly. He could see I was knocking, but he didn't know I was knocking quietly because I didn't want anybody to really open the door. And I did a few doors, and then a lady comes running down the street and she's yelling, honey, honey, stop, stop. And I'm kind of freaking out like, oh, she's going to yell at me. But actually she said, you know, honey, if you want to sell anything, you're going to have to knock a little bit louder. So she was trying to coach me right on prospecting. Now, I went on to do it consistently because he made me. And I got used to it. And in my career, my average routine was 3 hours a day on the phone, 2 hours a day knocking on doors. And did I love it? No, I loved the result from it. But oops, hold on, guys. Let me plug in. It says my battery is low. But I think the thing about it, though, is eventually your brain will adapt to any pattern. And so then what you're doing becomes easier, right? So I'll give you an example. If you have small children and you're trying to get them to learn to brush their teeth every morning. And I remember when my daughters were little, I have twins, they would hide the toothbrush under the bed. I would find the toothbrush in the toilet or the trash can. Like they just hated to brush their teeth. Now, you know, we wake up in the morning and it's not like our favorite thing to do, but it's so mindless. You don't even think about it. You just do it. And then you feel better after you do it. And prospecting is kind of like that, right? So here's the key though. To overcome your fear of prospecting, I think one of the important steps is do it consistently or your brain will never adapt to that pattern. Now, if you said, but it's so hard for me, well, then start every day at 9 o'clock and do it for 15 minutes. And then when you master that, do it for 30 minutes. Then when you master that, do it for 45. But see, it's much more important to do it every single day at the same time than it is to do some power day once in a while. Because see, your brain won't adapt to a pattern. There was, I read a lot of books on just the psychology of things that we do in creating habits and patterns. And there was this one book where they talked about, they went to a college and they asked for volunteers who might want to go jump out of a plane. And they took them out to a field and suited them all up, and they did a little swab and looked under the microscope, testing for the stress hormone cortisol. And their stress was through the roof because they were scared. They never jumped out of a plane before. But over the course of the afternoon, they had them do 5 jumps. And by the beginning, before they did their 5th jump, they did the retest again. And their stress level was only mildly elevated, about what it would be driving on the freeway in traffic. See, just in one afternoon, they went from scared to death to mildly uncomfortable. So that's the hope, right? I promise you that if you will do it consistently, you will get more comfortable. It will just become routine. Some of you are very faithful about going to the gym every day, and you know how you feel, just like that crummy feeling that, I didn't go today, because you're so used to it and you've built that discipline. Now, I think another reason people don't do their lead generation as consistently, prospecting, lead gen, whatever you want to call it, is it's not a protected, non-negotiable activity in their calendar. And what my broker said to me and kind of beat into me is, your prospecting is your future appointments. Like, if you don't do it today and you're just working the business you have today, you're going to go into the ditch. You're going to hit a slump. And then you're going to have to take 90 days to dig your way out of that ditch. So he said, you got to remember, your lead generation time in the morning, that's your appointment with your future. So protect it. And can you do it in the afternoon? Of course you can. It's just that I find for most people, they get tired, deals get messy, things are distracting, family life is happening, and they have a good intention to do it in the afternoon. They just don't get around to it. So I think if you can, even a small time block. I love the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. And James talks about how just the small habits over a long period of time will compound into a great result. So just imagine, like, let's say I'm going to grab my phone calculator here. Let's say that you guys intend to work 280 days in 2023. Most of you will work like 365, right? But let's just pretend it's 280 days and you talk to 5 people every day. Your lead gen was 5 good conversations. That would be 1,400 conversations in the course of a year. That's a lot. When I fly around the country and I get to meet lots of great agents, one of the things I often ask them is, how many purposeful outbound real estate conversations are you having per day? And they often tell me 2 or 3 a week. That's pretty common. So if that's you, start with 5 a day. And when you master your 5 a day, if you can do 7 a day, do that. If you can do 10 a day, do that. Ideal, if you said what would be ideal, I'd love it if you had 20 conversations a day, eye to eye or ear to ear. And I know that's not easy, but that's for those of you who have a really big goal. Or if you're really new to the business and you're, like my broker told me, he said, you're going to have a lot of conversations because you don't have a budget to market. You don't have a big database. And he said, plus you're new, you're going to screw up a lot. So talk to a lot of people, right? But just really remember, even just those 5 quality conversations a day could even potentially double your business. So develop the habit, protect it in your calendar, and I think really attaching it to your big why. Why are you doing it? Because we all need something to drive us on the days that we just don't feel like it. So is it to pay off debt? Is it to buy a new house? Is it to put your child through college? Like, what is your big why? We have a client for years who grew up very poor in Vietnam. And he has a saying when he prospects, he says, I tell myself, prospecting equals freedom. The freedom to help my family back home, the freedom to live a good life with my family here, and even the freedom to say no to some of the clients I don't choose to work with. So you kind of have to find your emotional attachment or reason. Why am I doing this? The other thing that I see is a problem is people don't have their lists of who they want to call organized. So they come in the morning and they have a limited amount of time, and they spend most of that time trying to decide or figure out, who am I going to call? So the more prepared you can be in advance, the better off you'll be. I used to do my best to pull on Friday all of the numbers and areas of focus that I wanted for my next week. Now, I'd also add in fresh each day any new expireds, but I always wanted to be sure I had plenty of things in my system that I knew I could focus on and call. So if you can be prepared ahead, that would be best. Also, I would take a look at your environment. I'm kind of a freak about this. Like, I need to have, my scripts posted. I need to have my technology that I need organized and ready. I want nothing on my desk except my computer and whatever I need to make those calls. Because I know if I have stacks of files, I'm going to get distracted. And if I'm stopping and checking out my social media or taking a phone call from my friend, I'm going to get distracted. So I really try to be intensely focused. And we had a client during COVID, her husband was working at home. They were homeschooling their children. Their house was not that big. So what she did is she went into her master bedroom closet, emptied it out, put a little desk in there with a phone and said, or with her, her phone, but put a desk, a chair in there, put her scripts on the wall at the end of the closet, and put a sign on the doorknob, "Mommy is working." And she would go into that closet and do her lead gen. Not fun, not pretty, but it was actually very effective, right? She did just fine. So who to prospect first? And also I think this is good when you're just really getting your prospecting muscle. Decide who is the easiest for you to call. And sometimes who's the easiest for you to call is where you're already getting most of your business. But there's a weird division. It's interesting, Justin. There's, I think, about half the people that love to call the people they know, and then half the people that say, I'm not comfortable with that. I would rather call strangers. Well, we need to do both, right? Because the people I think if you can get away from the limiting belief of, I don't want to bother them, I don't want to appear needy, and instead remember, you're the wise advisor. There's a lot of weird stuff going on in the real estate market. Just call them and say, I was thinking about you, and I thought you might like to have an update on what's happening in your local market. What questions do you have for me? I'd be happy to answer them. By the way, do you have any real estate related plans in the next 6 months to 2 years? Because if so, we should be pretty strategic about the planning for that. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. I'm always happy to help your friends and family. Can you think of one person today who might have a question or a need that I could help them with? Right? Pretty simple. But I always encourage people, if you're willing, go to that source where most of your business comes from, dig in there first, because that's where you're likely to get more traction, and it's also likely to be a little bit easier for you. right? And then when it comes to calling strangers, we also have to remember there are more people in the world that you do not know versus people you do. And I'm really on a campaign right now with our clients to say, expand your range, your reach, and your influence, whether that's networking or geographic farming or circle prospecting. And remember, even if they're not ready to buy or sell right now, we can bring them back and put them in your nurture campaigns, right? We just want to keep them categorized. So we've got our past clients, our sphere, we've got our A and B buyers and sellers, and then potentially we have our C group, people we've met in the community. They're not buyers or sellers. We might not be calling them. We might not be spending money to market to them via mail, but we can put them in our CRM and run our nurture campaign, right? Because you never know. We have a client in San Diego who has 20,000 people in his C category. Now, he's been in business a long time. He had a radio show. They did community events, lots and lots of open houses, and they just always brought those nurtures back and put them in the campaign. And he told me that every month they get 7 to 9 listings a month, people that just called up and said, hey, I've been getting your emails forever. And the only reason they know who they are is they can go and look up their name in the CRM and see where they met them. But they really don't know them, right? So your lead generation is for right now business. It's for business in the future. And it creates great nurtures that, who knows, one day might need your help. The other question I always like to ask myself when it comes to lead generation is, what is it that I am avoiding? And I know that if I would just do it, I would be a success. So what are you avoiding? You know, if you just did it, you'd be a success. And I'd also encourage you to look at the opportunities that your market is presenting and say, hey, that might be a niche that right now is really timely. You know, in some markets, we are starting to see more expireds and canceleds again. Maybe that's a niche. In some markets, we're starting to see more absentee owners listing and selling their properties because they don't like the market conditions, or they're thinking this is a good time to cash out. So look at your market and be a little strategic, you know, as you choose your sources. You know, I also think that we should look at your personality. See, if you are coming to forward coaching and you said, Debbie, I want a coach and I need to add additional lead generation pillars, I would look at your personality. So for an example, if you're a very high D, high I personality, I know that you're going to be more comfortable calling cold things. I know you're going to be more comfortable being out networking. However, if you're a low D and very high C personality, I know that you're probably going to be more comfortable with categories that are less emotional and maybe even more marketing driven, where you can send valuable reports, information, for example, to investors, and call behind to answer their questions. So I don't necessarily want you to do exactly what the person in the desk next to you is doing. I think as you choose your areas of lead gen focus, pick the ones that are the best fit for you. Of course, you still have to get out of your comfort zone a bit, but if it's the best fit for you, you're more likely to actually stick with it and do it. And we're also encouraging our clients, it doesn't have to be all on the phone. I think there needs to be a good balance. You know, if you're doing the phone work in the morning, and then maybe you go out and you have a networking group you're meeting with, maybe you're having lunch with a past client who can give you referrals. Maybe you're knocking on the door of a for sale by owner. Maybe you're knocking doors in your farm. I just think it gets a little weird for most of you to just be stuck on that phone all day. My routine always was that any given day, if I did not have an appointment, I would find at least 2 people I could get in front of. And maybe that's even visiting a past client, right? Or a sphere of influence. If you do a lot of cold calling, just a little tip on that, or they like to call it circle prospecting now. If you do a lot of circle prospecting, I discovered that if I were speaking with someone who's a cold stranger and they tell me that they're going to sell their house in 6 months, well, of course, I'm going to follow up. I'm going to stay in touch. But I found that my conversion was dramatically higher when I went and met them at the door. So I would just ask them, I'd say, hey, Jeff, I'm going to be in your area anyhow. Would it be okay? I'd like to stop by your door this afternoon. And I just want to drop off a little information, say hello to you in person so that you can put a face with the voice when I check in with you in the future. I found that when I did that, my conversion on those cold leads went up dramatically. So they didn't have to let me in their house, just wanted to stop and say hello in person. I do think that scripts are important. However, I don't think you want to be a robotic telemarketer. I took a class once called Over the Phone Training. It was when I was pretty new in the business. And I remember we were practicing and role playing, and the instructor of the class said to me, "Who are you being?" And I said, "Well, professional." He said, "I know, stop it." And his point was, relax, talk like a normal person, be engaging, be interested in them. Don't be so obsessed with, I got to get a deal out of this person. Find out where they need your help and calm down and slow down. But if you have the scripts that you feel comfortable with and you practice them, you rehearse them, you internalize them, now you can make them your own, right? Now you can relax. Now you don't have to worry, what are you going to say? You already know. Now you can just listen to them. And I think also the nice thing is the objections never really change, just the voices or faces. So take your top 3 to 5 objections and come up with at least one great way to respond, right? And then you'll feel comfortable because you'll feel ready. So when I think about really being engaging on the phone, I think simple steps to rapport: mirror and match their rate of speech. If they're a fast talker, talk fast. Slow talker, slow down. Ask great questions about things that matter to them. So I think of it as the who, what, where, when, why, and how. What are they looking to accomplish? When are they looking to do it? What's important about that time frame? And then acknowledge and approve. People love to be acknowledged, love to be approved of. So mirror and match, ask great questions, acknowledge and approve. And just remember, the first no is reflex. My husband, we had to go to a wedding and he had this pair of pants and he needed a shirt to go with it. And we went to Nordstrom's and we were in a hurry on a quick lunch break. He's carrying the pants in a bag. The salesperson says, "Can I help you?" And what did he say? "No, I'm just looking." I'm like, seriously? Can we not get this done? But I was just quiet. I wanted to see what the salesperson would do. And they said, "Okay, that's fine. No problem. I'm here if you need my help." They walked away. They watched for a minute and they saw him looking at shirts and they came back over. "Oh, I see you're looking at shirts. Are you trying to match a pair of pants that you have in the bag?" "Great. Well, can I help you with that?" "Oh, did you see these over here that were on sale?" Just ask great questions, very calm, very engaging, not pushy. And within the 30 minutes, we left with 2 shirts, 3 pair of socks, and a belt. Okay. But he got past the reflex no. "No, I'm not moving." "Okay, I'm curious. if you ever were to move, where do you think you'd go next? Or, no, we're going to wait. We're not going to sell the house right now. I understand. When do you think you might be interested in putting the home on the market? Well, next year. Okay, that's fine. I understand. May I ask you, what's important about waiting until then? Because see, here's the key. When I ask what's important about a future time frame, I'm looking to figure out, is this a condition or is this an objection or procrastination? So if they said to me, well, I'm having brain surgery and I'm going into the hospital tomorrow, I'd look pretty silly if I had jumped right into a dialogue about why now is a good time. I would be pretty tacky. But on the other hand, if they just said, well, we think the market will be better next year. If I said, well, that's an interesting thought. I'm curious, if we got together, if we examined the data, and you truly felt there was a better opportunity to do it now, could you take a look at that? Well, yeah, I might take a look at it. Well, I'm always in your neighborhood anyhow. Why don't we get together for a few minutes tomorrow? So I really know that first no is just reflex. I also have to realize that they lie. And I'm not saying they're bad people, but they tell you 6 months and it's really 3 because they don't want to be pushed or pressured. So you got to do all you can to stay in rapport. You've got to ask those great questions. And of course, we don't want it to sound like an interrogation. That's why I do those question softeners. I'm curious. May I ask? I was wondering, hey, would you please tell me more? Because it seems more natural, right? Like I'm really interested. Now, we've all probably done this. I know I have had a case of what I call contactitis, where you're like grinding the calls. Okay, well, at least I'm making my calls. If I just make my calls, something good will happen. Maybe. But I also find that if you go focused on appointments, I need to get on the phone today and I need to set at least one great appointment. Your likelihood of actually creating appointments is far greater because we kind of get what we expect to get, right? I'm just going to make contacts. I'm going to get through my contacts. I'm going to get through my dials, or I need to set one great appointment today. And for some of you, your goal may be more than one. So just remember, guys, none of us are born disciplined. People say to me, how do you get up at 4:15 and you're on the phone at 6 a.m.? I'm like, well, for 22 years, I've had clients in the East Coast that I started with early in the morning. It's just my habit. It's my routine. So discipline comes after you do the habits for a long period of time, right? And remember, sometimes the win, the objective is just get on the phone at the same time every day. And then you start increasing the conversations. Then you start improving your scripts. Then you start being more focused on getting past the no. And before you know it, it does become easier, right? And I remember complaining to my broker once, as you can tell, he was pretty hard on me, pretty direct. And I said, but it is, I don't love it. It isn't that fun. It's kind of boring because once you get past the fear, it actually becomes kind of boring. And he said, Debbie, that is why they call it work. Because if it were super fun, it would be called vacation. So go do the work so you can go on vacation. But, in some weird way, that helped me. It helped me to realize that I didn't have to love it, that sometimes it'd be boring, and I just had to master that repetitious boredom. And pretty much anything as a career that we would do, as you gain skill and mastery, you're going to get bored with it. That's just human nature. But also then you can find the challenges there on how to take that skill to the next level, or how to add new opportunities when you become masterful. So I want to leave you with just a last funny story, Justin. This is an actual real person. He's a phenomenal broker, mega successful man. But when he first got into real estate, he moved from England, and he's Persian, so has very heavy, had a very heavy accent, still kind of does. But this is 30 years ago. And he said, I wanted to sell real estate. So I would get on the phone. He said, I had no training. So I would say, we'll just call him Fred. He would say, hi, this is Fred. You want to sell your house? Okay, bye. Hi, this is Fred. You want to sell your house? Okay, bye. And here's what he did though. 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, calling at the time through the phone book, A to Z in Orange County, California. He took 100 listings that year, guys. Now, pretty painful, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, but it shows you when you talk to people, you find leads, right? But now for all of you who are much more skilled and talented and smart, and you have scripts, it will be a lot easier than that, right? So just start with your 5 good quality contacts a day. And if you're only going to talk to 5, remember the goal is I need to set at least 1 appointment. Okay. So I really appreciate you guys showing up for this topic. I know it's not the most favorite of all. So these are the few, the proud, and the brave.
Prospecting is necessary.
Yeah. And so if anyone has a question, they're welcome to ask it. Otherwise, I'll just jump off here and turn them back over to you.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I just want to point out, so you had mentioned earlier, ask who do you know, or do you know someone, right? So when you're having conversation and you're like, they're not going to sell or whatever, well, great, expand on it, right? There's always an opportunity to maybe one up or be introduced to somebody that can potentially be a client, or maybe they even know somebody else, right? Just that chain reaction. It keeps going.
I'm really glad you brought that up too, because I think the way that we often have done it in the past is to say, please keep me in mind.
Yeah.
Well, they mean to, but they're very busy. And that's why it's much more powerful if you can say, and I just love to say, I'm always here to help your friends and family, even if they're not ready to buy or sell, they just have a real estate question or situation they need some advice on. Tell me, can you think of one person today? And then I like to do the memory jogger, somebody at church, somebody at work, maybe at your child's school, somebody that you've talked to in the last 24 hours, which kind of gets their brain going. And then if they say no, then I can say, well, I'm always here for you. Please keep me in mind. And if you think of someone, would you please text me? That way I can reach out to them because they might be too shy to call me. And then I do think it's important too for all of you to remember that sometimes your clients and the people you know, they have a perception of the areas that you service. And that's why I always have my husband say, I'm licensed in the state of California. I sell everything from condo to mansion. And I know amazing agents all across North America. So if you or someone you care about needs help, please call me first, right? Because I hate getting those phone calls where they'd be like, oh yeah, my sister just sold her $1 million house. And I'm like, well, why didn't you call me? Oh, I didn't think you worked that area. Oh my gosh, dagger through the heart, right, guys?
Yeah.
So ask specifically for what you want, use those memory joggers, and just come from that service heart of I'm happy to answer their questions. I'm happy to provide valuable information. No pressure at all. Because I also think sometimes when they know you're busy and successful, sometimes they're hesitant to send someone to you if they don't think that person is a totally legit deal right away. So I think that's why it's good to open that up, that you're happy to have that conversation. So guys, if you have questions for me, then you can contact me. I will put it in the chat, Debbie at forwardcoaching.com. Can't spell coaching. All right. So feel free to send a question. Feel free to suggest to Justin if there's a topic that you would like to have us address in the future. And if you ever have a question about what it's like to coach with us here at Forward, I'll be the one talking to you. So feel free to reach out to me and I will be happy to answer for you.
Awesome. Hey, Debbie, so that if they want to learn more about your programs, because I know when we were at Summit, I've talked to a few agents and they said they had signed up and are loving it. So they can just reach out to that email address, correct?
They can reach out to that email and what will happen, we have no boiler room salespeople. I have two awesome guys, Ron and Gary, customer service. They'll get in touch with you, ask some questions, gather some info for me so I can read it and be prepared. And then they'll help you get scheduled into my calendar so we can have a good strategic conversation.
Awesome. I really appreciate you. We all do. And we look forward to having you again in the future. Guys, if you have any questions, don't reach out to Debbie. I hope everyone has an amazing rest of your week and weekend, and we will see you in escrow very, very soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye, everyone.